Hi, and welcome to our Survive and Thrive webinar series. My name is Natalie O'Rourke, and I'm the Executive Director at the Texas Oncology Foundation. For those of you who are new with us, our foundation is dedicated to providing support to cancer patients and caregivers in the communities where they live, work, and receive treatment. Through our Survive and Thrive programming, the foundation focuses on survivorship skills and wellness issues for cancer survivors, loved ones, and caregivers. Today, we are excited to have Katie and Justin Ozuna to discuss finding opportunities when facing adversity as a cancer survivor. And we all know in this world right now, there is a lot, this topic is very relevant and there's a lot that they will share with us. Before we begin the presentation, Kelly Condon, our program coordinator, will provide some housekeeping items. Kelly?
Hi there, thank you all for being with us this morning. Like Natalie said, here are some housekeeping tips for this Zoom platform. Just to reassure you, if you are attending, we cannot see or hear you, but you can see and hear our presenters, so do not worry about that. If you are having any technical difficulties, the best solution is typically just to exit and rejoin the webinar session. If you're experiencing audio issues, you can always dial in to listen from a phone line. The dial-in option is provided on the registration confirmation email you received. For questions throughout this presentation, we ask you to submit any questions and comments anytime during this webinar in the questions tab. And if you just hover along the bottom of your screen, you should see a Q&A tab to where you can enter in your questions for our presenters. We are not going to answer them throughout the presentation. We are going to have a Q&A session at the end. So please keep them coming throughout, and then we will answer those at the end. We are also going to be utilizing the chat during this presentation. So again, you hover along the bottom of your screen and there should be a chat bubble. You click on that and you can participate with our presenters there. Lastly, this webinar is being recorded. The online archive will be available for viewing after this live session. The recording will be sent to everyone who registered in follow-up emails, and then it will also be available on our Texas Oncology Foundation website, which is texasoncologyfoundation.org. You go to our programs tab, and then along the left side, you will see Survive and Thrive Webinar Archive, which is where you will find this video in the future. Like Natalie said, we have Justin and Katie Ozuna with us today, and we are just excited to hear from them. These two have been frequent speakers at our Survive and Thrive Symposium events, presenting both individually and together on just a big range of topics. And so they are valued partners with our foundation and our community. They have a wonderful perspective and insight. And so I'm just excited for them to share their story with us today. So guys, thank you for being with us.
Hey, Kelly.
Hey, hi everyone.
Hi, everybody. How is everybody doing? If you can hear us, let us know in the chat. I don't know, hopefully we're unmuted. But also let us know where you're coming from. What city are you coming from? And if you are a cancer survivor, if you're a caregiver, if you're a friend, if you're just kind of a supporter, let us know where you're coming from.
I see Vicky from Dallas, Kathy and Jordan from Dallas, Suzanne, Tom,
El Paso,
Brandon from El Paso, Amanda from Austin, Jenny, awesome, Patricia Callahan, Yvette,
Wichita Falls,
woo, Round Rock, San Antonio, I went to UTSA, awesome. Dallas,
Kansas.
Texas.
Whoa, really cool.
Yes, Tom, Denise, Elena.
Awesome. We have people coming from all over. It's really cool.
That's awesome. Well, we're going to get started. I am Katie Ozuna, which makes this guy Justin Ozuna. We are proud dog parents to Dexter, Lucy, and Stella. We are also proud kitten fosters and also buffalo wing connoisseurs. Justin is also a digital communications expert, storyteller, and 14-year chronic myeloid leukemia survivor. I am a licensed oncology social worker, navigator, psychosocial coordinator, and also Justin's proud caregiver.
And also my hero. I love caregivers so much. But,
I'll remember that the next time we are arguing.
is that recorded? So why are we focusing on opportunities today? Our presentation's about finding opportunities when facing adversity as a cancer survivor. We've spoken about a lot of different topics affecting kind of our lives and how we've kind of used those topics to kind of improve, not only our lives today, but, kind of our lives over the past 10 years. And I felt like kind of in a pandemic when we're all kind of immunocompromised, things are hard, like the economy's hard. We really have to focus very intently on kind of opportunities. So what are opportunities? An opportunity is simply a set of circumstances that makes it possible to do something. So you see how important it is to kind of focus on the thing that we want to do, which is actually just move us forward when we're facing very, very challenging times, right? And over the course of this presentation, we're going to use our stories to talk about our lowest points and kind of how, like, together individually, like, we really helped ourselves and pulled ourselves out of those moments to create like a life that we wanted, a life that has been absolutely rewarding, working both with cancer patients and in the oncology world now. So the thing about opportunity, and the thing I love about opportunity is that it's really everywhere, right? When we focus on opportunity, it gives us control in uncontrollable situations. We get to choose what we focus on, right? We spend a lot of time kind of getting on social media and people are kind of like throwing things at you and we receive a lot of information. But when we actually take time to like look for the opportunities that we want to pursue, it kind of transfers that control back to us, right? And we, right now, more than anything, kind of in a world that feels like it's out of control, we kind of need to refocus on what gives us control. The second thing opportunity does, it helps enrich our experiences. So we can start being intentional about building the life that we want. It's a never-ending source of hope. And what I mean by that is when we start taking advantage of these opportunities, guess what? New opportunities arise, and that gives us more hope, right? And that keeps us moving forward. And opportunity is a gift that brings us joy in difficult times. Meaningful opportunities, these life-changing opportunities, kind of bring us everlasting joy and give us a sense of peace, right? And so even though opportunity is everywhere, it does require one thing of us, right? We have to actually look for it.
That's right. And so we want to give you guys one opportunity right now. We want you to look around the space that you're in. Don't get up, don't move, just look around. And we want you to identify something orange. And if you can't find something orange, find something yellow. And then comment in the chat box what you found. For me, I see a zip drive right here, Justin's inhaler.
I see a book on my bookshelf. What do you see? A candle? Peach jam.
Ooh.
A birthday card. Sticky notes. Rose petal. Orange cushion. James Avery gift bag. Notepad.
7-pound weights. Ooh.
Ooh. Somebody's lifting weights while they're talking to us.
Memphis, Tennessee.
Gel pen, highlighter, magnet, a folder.
These are all great.
A label and a flavor. Ooh, that takes intent. Focus.
Cat. Oh, cute. Yellow spice bottle, magnet. This is all great. This is all great. And Justin and I would bet that before this exercise, those are items that you didn't readily notice in your room. We've been prepping all morning, and I didn't notice that this little zip drive sitting right here on Justin's desk is orange. I didn't notice the book above us. I didn't notice his inhaler. And opportunity is like that. It is all around us. It's in front of us every day. Big opportunities and small opportunities. All we have to do is look for them.
So what does that look like? How can we take that like zip drive or that candle or that awesome jam? How can we take that same concept and apply it to your life? The way we do that is by a simple formula. So the simple formula goes like this. Well, it doesn't sound simple, but here it is. I will insert personally meaningful opportunity within a particular deadline by doing a plan. And I will achieve this by consistent action. So what does that mean? It's very, very complicated. And we're going to break that down into 3 easily digestible sections. So by the end of this webinar, you're going to have your personal opportunity formula in place, and you can really improve any aspect of your life. So the first and most important part of that formula is that you have to find your personally meaningful opportunity. I have to say it slow because it's hard to say. So this is say PMO, your personally meaningful opportunity. And the way to find that is to figure out kind of what is most important to you kind of in this moment. So what's most important to you? And we'll kind of look at a grid to kind of help you define those things. So when I first started, my PMO was, let me just say this. I kind of got ahead of myself. So for the first step is really to kind of look for this orange in your life. And the way you kind of do that is to begin with the end in mind, right? And so ask yourself these 2 questions. What do you really want from this experience? And when I say this experience, what I mean is kind of this adversity, this time where we're kind of stuck at home, maybe worried about our job, worried about our families, worried about ourselves. What do you really want to get out of this experience right now? The second thing is that you will believe that you will find what you're looking for, right? When I asked you to find something, or Katie asked you to find something that's orange or yellow in your room, in the room around you, you found what was orange or yellow in the room around you, right? You believe that you will find what you're looking for. And so we're kind of taking those 2 questions, what do you really want? And then just believe that you will find what you're looking for. And that becomes kind of your personally meaningful opportunity, right? We're not just talking about everyday opportunities. We're talking about something deep within. So when I first started this, I had to drop out of college 3 times because of cancer. I was just feeling really dejected. I was working a job that I hated. Like I was turning off people's electricity because they couldn't pay their bill. And here I couldn't pay for my oral chemo every single month, right? And so I felt bad. I was kind of living in this world of conflict, and I wanted more for myself, but there was no opportunities for me, or so I felt, because that next level was like I had to get a degree. I had to kind of, move up and kind of figure out what I wanted to do. When I first started this job, I was working for an energy company, and I walked into our corporate headquarters, and for the first time, really saw what it was like to be in a corporate environment. People in suits, people going up elevators, and it was just so inspiring to me. Here I was, just kind of this little meter reader, in Wichita Falls, and I'd come down to Dallas, and it was kind of this eye-opening experience. And I left that building that day, and I was like, I don't know what I have to do to get here, but I'm going to get here, right? And that became my personally meaningful opportunity. I wanted to use my downtime when I was at my lowest and I was seeing the most adversity to get a job on at the time I was working for a company called Encore. I wanted to join the communications team. That was my PMO. And that was the thing, kind of my GPS, my North Star.
And for me, my story about finding my personally meaningful opportunity, PMO, was when Justin was in treatment. It all started when we first met. Justin told me he was a leukemia survivor. I didn't know what leukemia was. I had never experienced cancer at all. So when he told me he had leukemia, I thought, okay, I don't know what that means, so that's fine. And then he said, and I'm also in remission. And I thought, okay, I don't know what that means either, so great. And I was just so excited at 24, 25 that he didn't have a wife, he didn't have kids, he wasn't Walter White. And we were just dating, and we were dating long distance. I was his caregiver from San Antonio. He was living in Dallas working on his PMO. And I didn't really know what it meant to be a caregiver. I showed up to some appointments. When I really got it, when I really got what cancer was about, it was after Justin was diagnosed with a mutation in his leukemia, and we went down to Houston, and things got really tough. We got engaged one day, the next day we were in treatment, the week after Justin could barely walk and not see very well, and it was eye-opening. It was eye-opening how hard it was to live with cancer and how invisible I felt as a caregiver to our medical teams, to our families, our friends. It was hard. And I remember one night when Justin was really sick and we were laying together, and I remember just promising myself, just saying, when we get through this, when we move to Dallas, I am going to dedicate my life personally and professionally to the cancer world. And that became my North Star. That became my compass, and what I started working for. And so moving now, you'll see on your screen, we have this opportunity grid with 5 major pillars: family, career, health, social, and spiritual. And we are going to come back to this every time we go through a section. So right now, we just went through how to identify a PMO for you. Justin talked about his, I talked about how I found mine, and here are some examples of what that might look like for you. And I just want to encourage you, don't feel like when you fill your blank one out, you have to have goals, you have to have PMOs in every category. You don't. You may love your career and that's what you want to do, and you are doing just fine. Don't feel pressure to fill everything out. But you can see here some of these meaningful opportunities. I can create meaningful conversations about my cancer diagnosis with my family instead of more superficial conversations. Right? Instead of not sharing the hard things, protecting them. For health, I want to make my health a priority. For social, I want to use cancer stories to provide hope to other people. The important thing to remember is that your PMOs come from deep within you through deep reflection about what you want from these hard experiences. It's the difference between saying, I love this, I have to do this, I cannot do anything else besides work towards this goal, towards this opportunity, versus something more superficial like, oh man, it'd be cool to do that. Oh, it'd be cool to do that or experience that. Going back to that social, this is a good example. I want to use cancer stories to provide hope to other people. It would be cool to meet other cancer survivors. It'd be cool to get that support, to share stories. The personally meaningful opportunity is using those stories to provide hope to other people.
So focusing on your PMO, it helps you, as you can see, kind of build the life that you want and maybe leave behind the life that you don't want. Maybe that superficial thing, that thing that kind of gets under your skin, like you're really focused on one thing. You're using your limited time that you have available to focus on that one thing. So now we're going to help you kind of bridge the gap between your PMO and kind of that actually putting it into action. And the way that we do that is to, so a PMO alone, just remember to keep in mind that just having a PMO alone is just nothing more than a dream or a wish, right? The next level, the next part of that formula is actually getting it out of your head and onto paper, right? And so that makes it a reality. Adding a deadline, when do I want to do it by, in a plan? So to do that, you just have to ask yourself these questions, these 3 questions. Number 1, how quickly do I want to get this result? Number 2, what is preventing me from pursuing this opportunity? What barriers are in the way? For me, that was I didn't have a college degree. I couldn't join the communications team. 3, what plan can help you overcome these things, right? So we're doing 3 things. We're taking your PMO, we're putting a deadline on it and saying, hey, I want this thing in 1 month and 6 months and 1 year. Here's what's going to get in the way, and here's the plan I have to overcome that. So for me, I was told in 2012 or 2010, actually, my medication was no longer working. That the only option that I had at the time was a clinical trial or a bone marrow transplant, right? So for 3 months, I went down to MD Anderson where the clinical trial was. And I knew that I was going to have 3 months time off of work with FMLA leave and all that kind of stuff. And so I decided to use that downtime to come up with my plan. My plan was to practice writing so that at the very least I could start demonstrating my abilities to people on the communications team. I could use kind of that portfolio and build on those storytelling elements while also, kind of educating my family and friends on what was happening and what, the technical terms and all that kind of stuff was. But I just wanted to put that in a blog, right? And I really just wanted to practice. I was like, 3 months down the road, I'm going to have, maybe like 3 months worth of blogs, and kind of unique storytelling that I can then take back to my work and say, hey, like, is there an opportunity for me to do something here, right? So something interesting happened. I was kind of talking about opportunities. When you start putting these things into action, other opportunities arise. Well, it turns out that after the first week of writing, MD Anderson, the communications team, reached out to me and said, hey, we love your stories. We want you to write on our patient platform. And their patient platform reached across the country. And it was like, oh my gosh, it's like, this is a really cool opportunity for me. Of course I'll do it. I was scared. I didn't know what I was doing, but I was just going to give it my best shot. And so I was very intentional about that, right? I put together my deadline and put together my plan. My plan all of a sudden became, hey, I want to write about the unique angles affecting young adults with cancer, right? We had just gotten engaged. We were kind of trying to figure it out. I started talking about dating. I started talking about guilt, started talking about fear and isolation and all the things that kind of come with this kind of really, really difficult time that we were going in. And so my deadline became the 3 months I was off and receiving treatment. And my plan continued to be, hey, I want to use this opportunity, this new platform, to get a job on the communications team. At the time, a college degree was required. So I had to figure out what are the alternate paths, right? What are maybe some relationships that I can develop? What are some things that I can do to maybe overcome that one requirement? And that was kind of my plan.
For me, again, my PMO was helping all of the survivors and caregivers coming behind me, taking professional and personal opportunities to do that, moving professionally into oncology. My deadline, how quickly I wanted to do that, was immediately. Your girl needed a job. So when we moved to Dallas, I started looking. I started sharing my opportunities first to anyone who would listen. A lot of times it was my mom and my dad and Justin and a social worker and a nurse on their lunch break at one of our healthcare systems. And I'm on my soapbox about how hard it is to be a caregiver and listen up and all of that. And meanwhile, I applied for jobs. I got one at American Cancer Society, and I thought, man, I did it. I reached my goals. I'm working here. I'm going to work here for as long as they'll have me. And it turns out that was a short amount of time. That position ended, and I reapplied at American Cancer Society for another position. Didn't get it. I applied at Leukemia Lymphoma Society. Didn't get that job either. It all felt hard, this opportunity had ended. But still on the side, I took advantage of the other opportunities I had to share our story, to speak to anyone who would listen, and just kept going. It motivated me. That setback motivated me. I got another job at a coffee shop and then also at a 2-year local college. And those opportunities were like water in the desert. Every time I got to go and do something in the cancer world, I thought, yeah, this is where I want to be. This is what I want to do. And it fueled me to study for my licensing exam so I could work in healthcare. It fueled me then after I passed that exam to then apply for jobs. And I got offered 2 positions at the same time, almost right away. And the job I took, I've been at for 6 years. And the person that hired me was one of those nurses on her lunch break in that 4-person presentation who remembered me, remembered my name, and said, hey, I'm going to give you a shot. at a position that was originally designed for a nurse. So man, that gets me, I get a little choked up when I think about that. But so going back to our grid, this first row is your meaningful opportunity. It's your passion. It's your fire. It is what you want to do. It is where you want to be. It is how you want to be and how you want these hard times to shape you. And then the second row is just your plan and your time frame. It's your actionable steps to how we're going to get there. So you can see that deadline and those goals in each of these. So for social, going back, I want to use cancer stories to provide hope. The time frame is in 3 months, I will have a collection of stories to share publicly and launch my site. The actions are, I will create a Facebook space that shares survivor stories. There's my plan. In 3 months, I'm going to have stories and I'm going to share it. Looking at career, in 1 year, I want to launch my nonprofit by getting referrals from my community contacts. Family, if you just go through all of these, right, you have that time frame, right? Health, the next time I meet with my physician, there you have your deadline. By the next time you meet with your physician, you will have a referral to a cancer-specific exercise group and a cancer-specific nutritionist.
So remember, just to recap, having a PMO just in and of itself really isn't going to do much, right? Katie could have easily, without a plan, without a deadline, could have gotten into another field, gotten a job, and then led a really unfulfilled life. She wouldn't have had been able to touch the patients that she's been able to touch now, or we wouldn't even be giving this presentation. So that second point, without a deadline and plan, your opportunity is just going to kind of go away. And we've all had those moments, right? The missed opportunity, that one that got away. Adding a deadline and a plan is a way to kind of make that concrete. But there's still one more thing, right? There's still one more thing. There's one more step to life-changing opportunities. One more thing to kind of get you over that hump. If you go back to our opportunity formula, it's consistent action, right? Because consistent action is what takes that plan, that deadline, and helps you overcome the barriers and obstacles that will get in the way. I promise you're going to have setbacks. You know, there's so many challenges and so many moments of adversity out there that it really requires consistent action. So once you start fueling that progress, focusing on that progress over the outcomes, right, reinforces your confidence. And that starts opening up new doors along the way. So what do you do? Like, how do you put that into your life? Well, you have to ask yourself this one question. What small action can I take every day to get the result that I want, right? One small action to get the result that I want. So going back to our opportunity grid, let's start with our family. Well, we started out with our PMOs. I can create meaningful conversations about my cancer diagnosis. My plan and time frame was create a blog. I'll write a blog to update my family, and the consistent measurable action that you can take every single day is I will write and share consistently and honestly, right? I'll not protect my family from hard emotions or talking about difficult things. In career, maybe it's, after kind of you have all your referrals from community contacts, if you really wanted to, I will research nonprofits and start making connections in the local oncology community, maybe holding 2 fundraising events per year. Your social life. I will connect with other cancer survivors and write 1 story a week. So you can kind of see we're taking an idea, putting it in on paper, and then actually kind of taking the steps to making that a reality. This third row is really the glue that holds everything together. If you don't get to this third row, then you're going to either miss your opportunity or the opportunity is going to die kind of in your mind or on a piece of paper. So this is the most important thing so that you can actually make a lasting impact in your life. It's important to remember that, these major life shifts happen as a result of these small, consistent actions over a long period of time, right? And that's why we're not talking about goals today. The goal is something that you like, hey, I kind of vision me crossing this finish line. We're not talking about finish lines. We're talking about those reps, you know, every single day, those reps that are going to get you stronger and stronger. So if you want meaningful change, focus on your progress instead of the outcomes. So here's what happened when I did that. When I started taking action, something crazy happened. Oncology professionals started noticing my writing and my blogs and started asking me to help with young adult conferences and events. And so I started volunteering, and Katie and I started volunteering and kind of sharing our story and talking about these things in person. And I met somebody named Heidi Adams, who's just an amazing mentor of mine. She was the president of Critical Mass, a young adult cancer organization at the time that had formed under the Live Strong umbrella. So they had come out and they said, you know, we're dedicated, we're a coalition, a national coalition dedicated to improving the lives of young people with cancer, addressing the same things that I was kind of talking about in my blogs. And so I went up to her and I was like, hey, I can manage social media. I didn't know anything about social media at the time, really, but it's like I had an account. I was like, I can manage your social media for you. And I started learning how to do that. And we grew that account to thousands of followers across the world, around the world. And so I use that to kind of build skills in my portfolio. I was still trying to get a job in the Encore communications team. I applied once, but I didn't have a degree, so they didn't even look at me. I didn't get an interview, right? So I started building these things. Kind of as we went along, and I used that to start making connections with the Encore communications team, and a position opened up and I applied. And because I had the portfolio, because I had made these connections and started writing for my company as a result of these things, they hired me. And so I went from like 2009, not even knowing how to read an electric meter, to all of a sudden in 2013, I was a company spokesperson, like on camera talking about like outages and all these, like, it was just this mind-blowing experience, you know? And then I started sharing my story on stage. I'm just an introvert. Like I don't like speaking at all. But it was so important for me to kind of share these perspectives. And so I started getting asked to do these things. I joined patient advisory groups to talk about our experiences as young people living with chronic cancer. And then something crazy happened. I left the communications team to be a director of communications for a local young adult oncology group that was building the first inpatient unit for young adults in an adult hospital. So they had these inpatient units at children's hospitals. They just didn't have them in adult hospitals. And so I got to market that. I got to promote that and be a part of that experience, all because I started taking action, right? And so my action, I was constantly kind of looking for ways to use my experiences to create new opportunities for myself. Then I built on those opportunities to learn more. So here's what that kind of like visually looks like, right? So before I had this passive mindset. I kind of believed that kind of life happened to me. And when the opportunities presented themselves, I kind of was like, either like took advantage of it or like I missed it, right? And so I was kind of just waiting for things to happen. I had to drop out of college 3 times because of my diagnosis, because of setbacks, because my medication was working. I had to go down to MD Anderson. I had really no direction or purpose. I had no idea what I wanted to do in life. I had no meaningful impact in the world. I hadn't really done anything. And I was really naive about like young adult cancer issues. I didn't realize that like I wasn't the only person going through the things that I was going through until I started talking about that. And so once I started looking for these opportunities, the dramatic shift happened. Here's what happened. My mindset shifted from passive to proactive. Life became my response to kind of what happened to me, right? I started seeking out these opportunities in many different areas of my life. And I started making meaningful contributions by meeting meaningful people like that were already in the industry. I started participating on patient advisory boards and helping other survivors with my marketing skills, getting them the resources that they needed. So many things, so many doors opened up, and I feel like I am just getting started. That one thing would have never happened had I not focused on that kind of glue, that taking consistent action, small actions every single day to kind of build on the opportunities before.
And so my opportunity shift again was just when we went to MD Anderson. I went through this before. My before mindset was just trying to support Justin. I had no idea anything about cancer, the cancer world, that leukemia was a cancer. And so I really just looked to him to lead me. And I kind of just meandered along, doing the best I could, all the while feeling invisible, having a low quality of life, definitely. I also was finishing up a master's program, and I had no idea what I wanted to do. There were lots of things I was interested in, but not interested in enough where I could see myself doing them forever. I had never written in depth about anything I was going through, definitely not anything challenging or hard. I had never thought about publishing research or doing research on large scales or small scales even. And I had only given school presentations very begrudgingly. I did not like presenting. And so after that shift, after those hard experiences, after thinking about what happens if Justin dies, we just got engaged and really sitting in those emotions, that is when everything shifted. I thought, when we get back to Dallas, I am dedicating my life to this space. I'm dedicating my life to everyone and everything in the cancer world, professionally and personally. And now I feel like Justin, I'm just getting started, but I've dedicated my life to the cancer world. I have been with the same healthcare system 6 years on a team that I love, that is highly motivated, creative. I love them. I have helped build the first survivorship program in the nation for this company. I work directly with cancer survivors and caregivers. I get to facilitate support groups with my colleagues. And I'm also building the first psychosocial oncology program for our Dallas-Fort Worth market. I've had opportunities to conduct research and publish research on a national scale. I have also had opportunities to be published and publish my writing nationally. And speaking, I have done local, statewide, and national presentations as well. And I feel like I am just getting started. Just to recap, my action was just sharing our stories. That was the daily action. That was the small action that tied me back to this personal mission in the cancer world.
Yeah, and the reality is that like we're not special. I mean, my mom would probably, our moms both probably think we're like special. Our parents think we're special, but anybody could do this, right? Like I was a 3-time college dropout, and all of a sudden now I'm kind of in the oncology world. I have my own business now. And that shift, it just periodically happens, like small. Sure, I would have never imagined way back when that would have happened. So when you look at kind of your opportunities, this is a really, really powerful formula, and we'll kind of walk you through, we'll kind of recap exactly what that looks like. So the opportunity formula is simple. Number one, just find your personally meaningful opportunity, your PMO, find that. And then set a deadline, right? When are you going to achieve that? Develop a plan to overcome the obstacles that are in the way. Commit to these small, consistent actions over a long period of time. And I'm kind of throw a bonus in here. Focus on progress over outcomes. When you start focusing on outcomes, you tend to think like, oh man, I didn't get there quick enough, or maybe I'm not cut out for this, or maybe like I don't have the ability to do that. And that's just absolutely wrong. I mean, if we can do it, anybody can do it. And we have 56 people on this webinar right now. Imagine, if you will, like what it would look like if 56 people took their opportunity, the person, PMO, and then kind of went through this process. Where would we be in 5 years? How many other cancer survivors that are coming after you, or caregivers, or like, it doesn't even have to be cancer related. Like, what impact can you make on the world if you apply this formula to your life? It's just going to be a more substantial world, right? It's going to be more meaningful, not only for you, but for the people that aren't even here right now, that, aren't going through adversity right now. Use your challenges and your adversity to do something about it so that you aren't required to repeat it. So that is our opportunity. And thank you so much for this opportunity. You can download the slide deck at theozuniverse.com. That's kind of where our personal blog started and kind of ended in 2012. So you can kind of look back on the blogs and where I got started to maybe use that as inspiration for you. What you're going to find is that, number one, I didn't write that well. Like it's, you know, I've refined kind of my writing process since then and my communication style. But I left it up there because it's a starting point for everybody, and it shows you kind of the things that we were going through. And you can also find the opportunity grid there or the Texas Oncology Foundation website. So we are going to stick around for a couple of questions, 10 questions. If you have a question about kind of any part of our story or any part of this formula or kind of how we can help you move forward, you know, and you can kind of
type it in the Q&A.
However you do it.
Guys, thank you so much for sharing. I always love hearing your story. It doesn't matter how many times. I always get something new out of it. You guys are just phenomenal. But just like Justin and Katie said, use that Q&A tab to send in your questions. We already have a few, so I can ask you all the questions and just let you guys respond if that's okay.
Yeah.
Sure.
Awesome. All right, so Brandon asked, what advice would you give to people who have trouble getting started making daily progress towards their goals or feel like they have failed if they fall behind making progress?
Yeah, no, I think progress starts with discipline. And that's one of the things that I've kind of figured out. Like, you have to prioritize it. And the way you do that is to put it in your schedule, right? To say like, okay, like when I first wake up, I'm not grabbing my phone. I'm making progress on my goal. I'm going to use 1 hour of my time to kind of focus my mind and give all of my attention to that one thing that I want, right? And that's how you kind of can continue to make that consistent action, at least for me.
Yeah, and I would just also challenge you to think about the kind of actions you're setting for yourself. Maybe an hour is too long. You don't have an hour. Maybe set it for 15 minutes or 30 minutes. Relook at how you can integrate that into your life in small ways. That 1% change will eventually, over the course of months, be a much larger shift in your life.
Yeah. And this kind of goes on along those lines. So I'm going to ask this question next, but Jordan asked, you know, what if you're just having that bad day? What helps motivate you and kind of push you forward when you already just don't feel the motivation? You're just having one of those off days. Can y'all just speak to that a little bit more in depth as well?
Sure. My partner, Jordan, helps me on my bad days. She's the one that asked that question. Now, when I'm having a bad day, I really just refocus. I take time to refocus. I take time. A lot of times these opportunities are going to come out of hard feelings. They're going to come out of the difficult times. I've sat in support groups, facilitated support groups where we're all sharing these hard things. And then inevitably it gets to someone who's like, yeah, I didn't have any problems. I have a lot of family support. Like, chemo was fine. I could eat. I didn't lose any weight. And I can see everyone's eyes kind of glazing over because that's hard to identify with. So I encourage you, sit in those bad days. What is bad about them? What can you do to make them better? How can you use those hard emotions, those hard days to fuel you the next day, the day when you're feeling better? I don't know if you have more.
Yeah, and the other thing I would add is just kind of remember your why. So like when I am helping or talking about, or I'm giving a presentation to other cancer survivors, I'm so far removed from kind of that initial diagnosis that I go back to those cancer groups and I'm like, what are people struggling with now? Or kind of what are the challenges? What is somebody facing right now, that raw emotion that maybe like I had forgotten about? And that always just recenters me. Just kind of remembering kind of why I started this whole process and why I'm doing it, and just getting those real life stories.
That's great. Justin and Katie, this is Natalie. I'll share another question. It's kind of a comment, and then there's a question from a caregiver perspective, but you mentioned in your presentation a framework for measurement, and this person does agree, something like blog posts per month. that's a measurable goal. But how do you measure some of the intangibles? And really from a caregiver perspective, how do you go about measuring that?
Wow, that is a good and hard question. So thank you for that. I mean, I guess when I hear that, how do you measure more intangibles like honesty from a caregiver perspective? How do you go about measuring something like that? It was hard. I mean, I'll be honest, it was really hard because we were focused on Justin and getting Justin healthy. And I almost felt like I didn't have a place to struggle because he was struggling so much. And so for me, measuring those was really about just my own compass. You know, when I talk to people, am I being the most vulnerable I can be? Am I being just the core of myself, the deepest, scariest parts to share? Am I sharing that? I saw a caregiver at a Survive and Thrive in Arlington one time, and she was like, you know, I'm taking care of my mom and I'm doing this and things are great and everything is fine. And I said, man, you must feel really invisible. I felt so invisible. And she started crying. I started crying. And we had this honest and real conversation about what it means to be a caregiver.
Yeah, and I would add just that really feedback is kind of your measuring stick, right? Like when you do something that's really honest and vulnerable, you're going to get a lot more feedback and a lot more me toos. And like I had never thought of it that way than you would if you played it safe and didn't really share much, and then you don't get much back. And I don't really know how you really put that on paper, but you kind of know when you're writing. And early on, it was very difficult to be honest. It's very difficult to be vulnerable because, man, I was like in my mid-20s. Like what mid-20s dude is going to be like really honest and vulnerable about the way that they feel? And I was very, very insecure too, right? Like Katie had just graduated grad school. Like I was struggling to get through college. Nobody in my family had graduated college. Like it was a new experience for me. And it wasn't until I really started sharing like these really vulnerable moments that I got that measurement back in return. And I'm like, wow, okay, like what I'm setting out to do, I'm getting that back. I'm seeing that back. I'm helping more people. And that became the measuring stick for me.
That's great. I do have a follow-up question to that. For, I guess, you know, along those same lines, if you just mentioned, you know, listen for that feedback, right? When you are vulnerable and you're sharing, what feedback are you getting? What if you don't have support from your loved one, your caregiver, your partner? What is the best way to get that feedback and maybe get plugged in, maybe someone who's not plugged into a support group of some sort, or they're just not getting that support at home. So how do they really work on that?
I kind of mention that because like for the first 4 years after I was diagnosed, I didn't know anybody my age with cancer. I really didn't seek that out. And I was struggling. I was struggling with emotions. I was struggling with like assistance, asking for help, figuring out how to like put, you know, my fears and concerns into words. And so I would just ignore it and push it to the side. And it wasn't until I started seeking out these opportunities, going back to our presentation, that I started meeting other like people with CML. And it was kind of through those moments, it was just like an aha, like I finally can talk to somebody who gets it. And I think more than anything, we just need to find that one person who gets it. And we can find it online, we can find it in person, we can find it, you know, like I mean, the internet is abundant with, you know, people that are struggling with a lot of the same things. And I would just say, you know, to intentionally look for that support, because you're right, not everybody has it from home, or not everybody's like Katie who can like really help me kind of navigate some of these things. And you just have to find somebody that does. And there's somebody out there that will.
Good answer. I'll allow it.
So Kelly, if you have I have a few other questions, but Kelly, do you want to jump in? Do you have any?
Yeah, no. So this one I think is really, you know, topical for our current situation, but they're asking, how has the COVID situation interfered with your objectives, and how have you managed tackling that during this time?
Man, well, I'll just share a little bit about me. COVID has been hard. I work at a healthcare system. My colleagues and I are all working from home. It's challenging. It's challenging. Our patients are stressed. Obviously, it's stressful for all. For me, I've been really unmotivated, if I'm being honest. I've been really unmotivated. I've been struggling with kind of just this overwhelming sense of something weighing on me. And for me, I ended up hiring a life coach. I had never thought about hiring a life coach. I had never thought about it before. And I thought, well, man, this is the time. This is the time to do it. And so I hired, her name is Mary. And that has kind of helped me move forward. If hiring a life coach isn't possible, I mean, I would suggest picking up books, finding new literature, turning off the news feeds like Twitter and Facebook, and kind of just consuming everything that comes your way, but more so being really intentional about what you're consuming, what you're reading, what you're looking at on those Twitter feeds, and who is inspiring you. What are you reading that inspires you to move forward? What are you listening to? What podcast are you listening to that makes you think, oh yeah, I have some motivation today. I want to write about that, or I want to talk about that.
Yeah, so the answer kind of in summary is just expanding kind of the what you can do. That's why it's so important to have a plan. When Katie, her position ran out at ACS, like she could have just like gotten a job, right? But like she was really committed and had that PMO, that personally meaningful opportunity that kind of burned within her. There's so many opportunities, there's so many chances or so many times in my life where I could have given up, and it wasn't COVID related, but it was like, degree related or like something even like more superficial, right? And so now we have the ability to pivot and we have the ability to adjust because we're trying to get to the same place. It just might take a different path, right? And that consistent action is going to help you get there. If I take a consistent action today to get, to the goal I want tomorrow and it's blocked, then I'm going to say, oh, what else can I do, right? Like I never would have imagine that Encore would have changed their complete hiring policy. I still didn't. When I got hired on the communications team, I didn't have a degree yet. And they changed their policy so they can hire me. And so if I saw that barrier and I was like, oh, there's no way I can't do it. With COVID, I can't, I've lost all my business. I can't do it. Or maybe I lost my job. I can't do it. That's really where things stop. But if you continue to kind of take those small actions, then you, at the absolute very least, you're opening more doors, you're meeting new people, you're creating more opportunities, and you kind of get to that place a little bit faster. It's probably going to take a different path.
And I mean, something you could do right now is just journal, is just reflect.
Yeah. Like
by journaling and reflecting, you are actively taking steps towards your PMO. Reflect on what that is. Why is that your PMO? Why are you so passionate about that? Reflect about all of these difficult emotions you're having, because those are what resonates with other people, right? Think about that support group. These hard opportunities, these hard emotions are what will resonate with other people, and they're what will move you forward.
Yeah, no, that's a really good point. And I like the reminder that these opportunities are ever changing and developing. So it's okay to take what's happening now to continue growing those opportunities. So absolutely. I think that's a really good reminder. And this is just a really fun comment that I just want to share with you guys. It came in on our chat and it just says, the lessons resonate on multiple levels through all stages of life. Thank you both for sharing your honest stories. And I think that is just perfect. Y'all really are great.
Thank you so much for sharing that.
Yeah, I hope y'all feel encouraged by it. Natalie, did you have any other questions you wanted to ask?
I see a few questions, and yes, so I have a few questions, and I think they could be grouped together. Katie, we've talked often about mindset, right? Because in order to see an opportunity, I think sometimes you have to be in a certain frame of mind. And so if you see your circumstances as negative, job loss, cancer, financial concerns, you watch the news, there are a ton of reasons we could feel really down. how do you, how would you encourage us? What tools could we use to help change our mindset to be more positive? And then, and with that, finding that opportunity, somebody asked if there was ever a time that you now or then, did you develop your own mantra to help kickstart your opportunity? So long question.
Man. These are good questions. I laugh because no, I didn't have a personal mantra, but last week my life coach helped me come up with one. So I finally have one, and it's just that I am enough. And so that's my mantra now, and I hope that will take me somewhere really great, fingers crossed. But the mindset is tricky because a lot of times we rely on our mindset as like, okay, I'm going to be in the mood to do this. And that's when I progress forward. That's when I take the small action steps, is when I'm in the mood for it. But really mindset comes after that action. So I would encourage you would you agree? Like those small actions will then motivate you. Writing about being a caregiver, that motivated me to then talk about it more, to then do more. But I didn't start off saying, okay, when am I motivated to write this blog? I sat down, hammered one out. It's the first one I ever wrote is for MD Anderson. It was ages ago. And that moved me forward, that I love this. I want to keep doing this. Okay, I need to write more. Okay, I need to see where I can go talk to someone about this who's going to listen. So I would encourage you to just, again, take those small action steps and the motivation will come.
Yeah, no, I mean, I agree. Progress over outcomes every single day, progress over outcomes, right? And when you start focusing on those things, then you stop beating yourself up. And a lot of the times we have so many like negative thoughts about like, oh, I can't do this, I'm unqualified, I like don't have the perspective, or like I'm not going through it like somebody else is going through it. Well, here's the deal, like you don't have to, like this is your story and you're going to help somebody else, right? It's not about you. So yeah, just I continue to go to that progress over outcomes. And when you start doing that, you'll look back one day like we did and be like, oh, holy cow, like look how far we've come, right? Look how many people we've been able to help. Yeah. If you'd have told me on day one that like I'll be on stage talking to 100 people in a room about like my story, I would have said no thanks. Like I really don't. Like I'm not even gonna get started. Right.
Yeah.
And
I thought the same thing. I've thought so many times, like, why, like, what am I saying that someone else hasn't already said or thought about or was on a huge stage giving a presentation about? But like Justin said, like, your experiences are so unique to you. And every time you take an opportunity, that leads to more opportunities. Until we did this presentation, I mean, a couple of days ago, I didn't even put two and two together that, oh yeah, when we got back to Dallas, I lost that ACS job. I didn't get that LLS job. Those were setbacks. But I didn't realize that, I mean, it's 9 years later, and I realized that developing a presentation and developing a different type of content and thinking about our story in a different way that I had never thought about before.
Absolutely. And it goes back to that point. Listen, we're not special. Like everybody can do this. And I really, really encourage everybody to do it.
That is so great. And I wrote this down. I like that mantra, Katie. I am enough. I think everyone should write that down and say that, because that's really awesome. So.
Well, and if I was my coach, I would say write it down every day, 20 times a day for the next week, and then see how it feels.
I love it. It's really great. Well, those are my questions. Kelly, I don't know that we have any more.
No, I think y'all have answered all of them. Thank you guys for just spending time with us this morning. We just value your partnership with our foundation so much. So thank you for always accepting our request to present.
And we're so thankful for these opportunities. Truly, like this, every time I get to present and talk to survivors and caregivers, I just feel like, man, I'm really doing it. Like I'm really fulfilling that promise I made. And so this is so rewarding tenfold on my end. So.
Absolutely.
Awesome.
Thank you so much for your time. You took an hour out of your day to come listen to us, and hopefully we've been able to kind of move you forward in a very small way and plant a very small seed that hopefully in 5 years from today, like I hope some of you come back and say, hey, we're doing it for somebody else. So thank you so much.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you everyone who came and attended today. I just want to remind you that this session was recorded and it will be sent out to all registrants in follow-up emails. You could also go to texasoncologyfoundation.org and find it on our Survive and Thrive webinar archive section. Just some updates, stay connected with our foundation. Justin, I think I sent you a slide with our foundation info. Would you mind throwing that up while I talk about that?
Oh,
Thank
yeah,
you.
sorry, I never got to that.
No, you're great. But yes, continue to stay connected with our foundation. We are continuing our Survive and Thrive webinar series. The next live session will be July 21st, and Tani Bhatti, who has been a nurse for 44 years, primarily focusing on improving the end-of-life care, will be with us discussing the impact of grief and just talking about compassionate understanding, allowing, and preparation. So please tune in with us then. And then if you haven't already, go like our Facebook page. Lots of updates will be there. And then also you will see our next live watch party is going to be July 16th, and Dr. Sabrina Mikan is going to be sharing about sleep and cognition. So be sure to be on the lookout for that information. And all of our past watch parties are there. Just last week, Simone Barnes hosted a laughter yoga session. That was really fun. So go check out all those resources on our page. Lastly, we value feedback from our community. In the follow-up email, you are going to see a link to a survey. Please take a moment and just provide us your thoughts on today's presentation. Also share topics you would like to hear about in the future. We are always looking for that input and suggestions. Thank you all again for participating, and we hope you have a wonderful afternoon.
Thank you. Bye.